Greetings! My name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything D&D, including advice for players and guides for game masters.
Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so that you can keep up to date with our RPG content. And also make sure to ring that bell so that you can get notifications for our channel as well.
A big thank you, as always, to all of our Patreon supporters for keeping the channel going. More information on how you can support our work at the end of this video. But for today, we are revisiting how to play a summoner in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
Earlier, we did a video on how to play a summoner in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which you can check out just up over there. In that video, we talk about some of the great classes, subclasses, feats, and of course the spells that you can bring to life in your games to make an excellent summoner. Since that time, however, there have been some extra releases for D&D, mainly Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which introduced brand new summoning spells. This kind of changes a little bit of what we said in that video, and there's new spells to bring into the equation. So if you haven't seen that video, make sure to check it out. But today we're going to talk about the new spells, who they're for, and who comes out on top as some of the great summoners now in D&D.
All of the spells that were introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything differ quite greatly from the previous generation of conjure or summoning spells that were found in the Player's Handbook and Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Rather than allow players to crack open the monster manual and grab a monster based on a challenge rating, this new generation of summoning spells give players a fixed stat block with stats that are modified according to the caster. So the monsters that you summon with these new spells will use your spell attack modifier for their attack bonuses and your spell saving throw DC for the DCs of any of their abilities. In addition, in most cases, these summoning spells have the amount of hit points, the armor class, and even the number of attacks they can make determined based on the level of the spell used to cast that spell with. Thus, they are really interesting for upcasting. One of the biggest things that I find really manageable about all this is that unlike some of the previous summoning spells, which allowed players to potentially conjure up hordes of summoned creatures to put on the battlefield, which can be a lot to manage and is also a little bit on the potentially game-breaking zone, this new generation of summon spells are really effective, really potent, but much more manageable in play for both players and game masters.
All of these spells have interesting similarities between all of them, such as they all last an hour, which can actually be really beneficial on the battlefield. When you summon this creature, it's going to last for a long time, multiple encounters, or even help you out in exploration or dealing with problems in the environment, solving puzzles, or just being an extra body to deal with traps in hallways.
It's important to bear in mind, though, that they do require your concentration, all of them during this period. But this is also counterbalanced by the fact that the spells are a little bit dynamic and allow you to choose what type of creature within the broad category you can summon. For example, Summon Elemental, which we'll talk about later, lets you choose fire, earth, air, or water, which changes the attributes of the creature. This means that the individual spells are actually quite adaptable and very flexible, and considering the fact that they're all one action to cast, unlike many of the previous summon spells which were actually 1 minute to cast, this means that you have a very adaptable on-demand summon that you can drop down in the middle of combat, but that you can bring from encounter to encounter to encounter, as long as you maintain your concentration.
The other thing that they all have in common is that although they do require an action to cast the spell, none of these summoned creatures require an action or a bonus action to be commanded by you. They obey your commands, but you don't need to do anything on your turn to do it. You just get to choose what it is that the creature does. This means that all of these summons work really well with whatever type of character you're playing, because you get to still do what you always did, but now you have an extra body on the board.
And finally, many of these spells are available to a wide range of classes. Druids and wizards in particular gain access to a lot of them, but warlocks get many of these spells too, and even rangers, clerics, and paladins will get to pick up some of these, although bards, I'm afraid, are out of luck. You'll have to use your magical secrets for these ones. And there is one selection for sorcerers, though, too.
So with all of that said, let's get started by looking at the new spells and who they're for and what they do. We're going to go through these spells from lowest level to highest level and talk about what we like about them and who they're going to be useful for.
So first off, at second level, we've got Summon Beast, which is for druids and rangers. This spell basically establishes the baseline for all the other summoning spells. At only a second level spell slot, it summons a pretty tough, for its level, creature that can either be air, land, or water, and either gains a flyby attack, a swim speed, or pack tactics, depending on what you choose. So you can have your wolf, or your eagle, or your shark.
I like the idea of your land shark that somehow is on land as well.
Yeah.
Don't know how that works, but use your imagination. What I like here is that right away at second level, druids kind of get to kick things off. And it makes sense that druids get to summon a beast right away. I also like that this fulfills a fantasy for me that is very relevant with the two classes that it's specifically designed for. Druids and rangers are both classes that we always want to have animal companions with them. We have Find Familiar, and trying to get Find Familiar on druids, Tasha's has also given us a way to do that. But rangers, it was somewhat tough to get your beast companion unless you were a Beastmaster ranger. But now this is kind of saying that any ranger or any druid can have an animal companion, which really fulfills a beautiful fantasy for me.
With a second level spell slot, this means that rangers have Summon Beast at 5th level. And if you are a Beastmaster, you can have your own little pack, because you can both have your Summon Beast and your Beastmaster's companion out and be commanding them both together. It's a really cool image to have be that pack leader. And I think it's a really effective combination for the Ranger, especially. The Rangers are going to have a tough time upcasting this one. And I think that with Summon Beast, it's one of those low-level, wonderful spells that is great right away when you get it, but very quickly drops off in potency by the time we get to our next spell, which is Summon Fae, which is a 3rd level spell. And with this one, druids and rangers both get it, but so do warlocks and wizards. So with Summon Fae, for a 3rd level spell slot, you're getting a 40-foot movement speed on this creature. It's a small creature that attacks with a short sword. The short sword, though, does 1d6 plus 6 damage, which scales up as you upcast it, plus another d6 force damage. So this little Fae creature is effectively swinging a great sword around as a short sword in terms of the damage that it deals. And if you upcast it up to a 4th level slot, it's now going to make 2 attacks. But what's super cool about this is the other ability that it has.
The Fae Spirit has the ability to teleport as a bonus action. Between Mirthful, Fuming, or Tricksy, you get an additional effect when you teleport. I think my favorite is the Fuming option, which allows you to gain advantage on your next attack after you teleport, which essentially gives them an ability that we find in Shadow Monks, my favorite ability, and gives it to this tiny Fae creature who's swinging a tiny sword that does the damage of a greatsword.
This spell is Summon Halfling Shadow Monk.
Yes.
Effectively. It's a little summoned Shadow Monk that is stabbing people for you. The damage on this spell for a 3rd level slot, and then when you upcast it to 4th level, means that it's very competitive with almost all the other summoning spells. And so if you are looking for, between these levels of play, what is my best damage dealer for the summon spells, the Fae Spirit might be it. And it's worth strongly considering even over the other 4th level options, although by the time we get to the higher level ones, I think that the competition really gets pretty stiff for the little Fae. But it's awesome when you first get it, and awesome up until about 8th level.
As a final note on the Fae Spirit, I do like that Summon Fae is available for the classes, like a lot of classes, all 4 of these. It seems fitting on all of them. You can have a Warlock of the Archfey. Druids always feel like they got to be in touch with the Fae, same with Rangers, and Wizards just get every spell. So it's awesome, and I think that this is one of the best entry points for summoning that you can get. As we move on to another 3rd level summoning spell, we're actually going to move away from Conjuration, oddly enough, and into Necromancy. Summon Undead is a Necromancy spell. It's available for Warlocks and Wizards, and when you summon this creature, you get to choose which type of Undead out of either Putrid, Ghostly, or Skeletal, which all have different implications on the sheet.
Yeah, the Skeletal Undead is basically a skeleton mage that fires grave bolts, whereas the Ghostly Undead is an incorporeal undead ghost. And the putrid is more like a ghoul, really, because it smells really bad, and so enemies that start adjacent to the ghoul can be poisoned. But then if the putrid summoned undead attacks a poison foe, not only do they take damage, but they have to make another saving throw or become paralyzed, making the undead, the putrid undead in particular, an amazing battlefield control option for potentially paralyzing your enemies, because there's no limit to the number of times it can do this. They just have to become poisoned by the smell, and then following that, they have to be hit by the attack and fail their saving throw. But if you have other spells or other abilities that can poison your enemies, you can combo these together for something really, really potent.
I think what's interesting here is that the skeletal option, I think, does present something awesome, which is ranged attacks.
Yes.
It's hard to compete, though, with the option of being able to poison foes, which, remember, even if you don't get to the point where you are paralyzing your targets, if a target is poisoned, they have disadvantage on attacks against you. There's a whole bunch of debilitating effects there with poison that it's just really great to have your enemies poisoned. Yeah. So if they get poisoned, you're already off to a great start. If you're attacking them and damaging them, you're already off to an even better start. If you happen to paralyze them along the way, that's the best case scenario. So the whole path to getting paralyzed is just full of goodies that you want anyway.
Staying in the realm of shadowy magic, but going back to Conjuration, our other third level spell here is Summon Shadowspawn. This spell summons some sort of foul creature from the nether realms of the multiverse that can take a variety of different forms, based on the emotions of fury, despair, and fear. All these creatures have their chilling rend attack, but they all have a dreadful scream that they can do once. This scream potentially frightens all the enemies, with everyone, friend or enemy actually, within 30 feet of the summoned Shadowspawn. And then from there, the other emotions now take over with your other ability that you get for the creature.
I think the clear winner on the Shadowspawn is Fury. Fury allows you to have advantage on attacks against creatures that are frightened of you. So the play here is that you drop into battle, run away from your allies into combat, scream, scare as many as you can, and then hit them for advantage. You're going to just be dealing a lot of extra damage, especially with advantage, and be an extra meat shield that is terrifying the enemies. And because you're hopefully running ahead of the crowd so that you don't hit your allies, it's going to be absorbing all the damage for the first round of combat to anybody who isn't running away screaming.
Now, Summon Shadowspawn is only available for Warlocks and Wizards, but I think it's a really effective example of one of those great 2-for-1 summon spells. Because of the Scream power, the Scream power is like the Fear spell, although it doesn't force the targets to flee. But it's still quite as effective as it, but you also get this other little dude that's going to come around tearing your enemies apart. So it's very efficient in terms of the spell slot when you compare it with the Fear spell, which is already a great battlefield control effect. Frightened is a really cool condition that imposes widespread disadvantage on your enemies and even affects their movement because they can't move closer to the target of their fear. So it gives you some interesting control and debuff options, as well as giving you a terrifying shadow monster that can tear your enemies apart.
As we move on to 4th level, we come to Summon Aberration. This spell is available to Warlocks and Wizards, and you can choose whether you want to summon a Beholderkin, a Slod, or a Starspawn. All give you slightly different attacks and abilities, and they all are pretty great, but I do think that the clear winner for me is the Beholderkin, mainly because the Beholderkin has the ability to fly, and it has ranged attacks. These ranged attacks are essentially really cool Eldritch Blast style attacks, which is why I specifically love this on a Great Old One's Warlock.
Yep.
And this is kind of the Great Old One. They're summoning a aspect of their patron, which is the Beholderkin. And now if you're blasting people with Eldritch Blast, you have a flying little eyeball monster that is also blasting people with additional Eldritch Blasts. It's just a lot of damage going out on the battlefield with that combo.
The eye rays deal psychic damage, which is very rarely resisted by any monsters, and The fact that the creature flies means that it has an inbuilt defense, but also that kind of vantage point to shoot whatever it needs to shoot with its eye rays. If you're looking for just a sort of fire and forget it summon spell that's just going to help you do more damage on the battlefield, this is the way to go for a 4th level slot.
The slot does have an ability to regenerate every turn, and the Starspawn has an aura that does additional damage. Although those are both really, really cool, I do think, though, that the Beholderkin's the clear winner.
Also coming online at 4th level is Summon Construct, which lets you basically summon a medium-sized golem that can either be made out of clay, metal, or stone. What's very notable about the Summon Construct is that it has a very high armor class compared to the other summons of its level at 13 plus the level of the spell. So as a baseline, it's coming in with an AC of 17, and it's pretty tanky, having got a good base of hit points for when you cast the spell.
I also think notably that this one is available for wizards and artificers, and it's the only summon spell that we see specifically designed for artificers.
Yes.
Which makes sense, it's a construct. My favorite option is the clay option, where if the clay construct takes damage, it will attack a creature within 5 feet of it with a slam attack at random. Now, this could be potentially dangerous if you're planning on sticking next to your construct, but sending it into battle, letting it have a few enemies around it, and every time it takes damage, it's going to whack somebody nearby, is pretty cool. If there are no targets nearby, let's say it's getting hit with a spell or a ranged attack, then it gets to move its movement up to an enemy. So if there's an enemy nearby and it gets hit with a bow and arrow, it can run up to that enemy and then continue fighting from there.
Rounding out the 4th level options, we have Summon Elemental, the classic summon spell, really, in my mind. I think most people who think of summoning either think of summoning demons or summoning elementals. And here we get the options available to druids, rangers, and wizards. I'm actually a little surprised that sorcerers don't get this one.
Sorcerers kind of got left out in a lot of this, and it seems weird to me. I guess they wanted to differentiate. I feel like this says that sorcerers are blasters more than conjurers.
I suppose so. In any case, you get to choose which of the classic elementals, earth, air, fire, water, and all that thing. And of all the summon spells, the Summoned Elemental has the highest base hit points for its level. It comes in at 50 hit points base, which means that the elemental on its own can be quite tanky. This is also very notable when you look at the resistances that the different elementals have in their stat blocks.
The resistances are pretty much what you would expect from the elementals, but I think most notably here is that the earth elemental has resistance to piercing and slashing damage. The fire elemental does gain immunity to fire, but a lot of things do, and actually the fire elemental impresses me the least out of all these options, because while the fire elemental does gain immunity to fire, all the other elemental types gain a special movement speed. So the earth elemental is going to have resistance to that slashing and piercing damage, as well as a burrow speed. So really, I think that the earth elemental comes out on top for me here.
Yeah, when you put that earth elemental down, you're against enemies that are only dealing piercing or slashing damage, you're basically putting like 100 hit points of damage absorption on the board. So the Earth Elemental is a great option for just a body blocker, if that's what you're looking for.
Finally, at 5th level, the Clerics and Paladins get some love. Now, for Paladins, this is going to be a long wait to get your summoning spell, sorry. But we have Summon Celestial as a 5th level spell. This lets you summon an angel. You can either summon an avenging angel or a defending angel. And actually, this is one case where I don't really have a clear winner. Both are excellent, depending on what you're looking for in your game. The avenging angel has a bow and arrow that does quite a bit of damage and has really good range on it. Whereas the defender has a mace and a shield, so their AC is going to be bumped up, and they do have to attack in melee combat. When they hit with the mace, they add temporary hit points to themselves or an ally within 10 feet. This, combined with the fact that either of them has a bonus healing ability, means that the defender can be a really good buff for the party, as well as smacking people around with the mace, but the Avenger can fly and shoot people.
It's worth noting that both the Avenger and the Defender have fly speeds built into them at 40 feet, and they're also large creatures, which means that I guess you could get a piggyback ride from one of them.
Why not ride an angel around the battlefield? If they can fly and shoot, there's a really compelling argument here that you can, I don't know, saddle up on its back. I don't know. I picture it as an angel. Maybe it's something different. Maybe it's a centaur angel. That might be more appropriate. Pegasus, centaur angel. Who knows? Maybe it's a giant blob of eyeballs with wings. Either way, you can ride it.
However, not to be outdone, the druids, sorcerers, and wizards do get a 5th level summon as well that was introduced in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, which was Summon Draconic Spirit. This spell is awesome. I think it might be the best summoning spell, hands down.
Absolutely, it's my favorite.
Yeah. It summons a large-sized dragon that has the highest AC of any of the summon spells at 14 plus the spell level. So it's summoning a 19 AC large flying dragon. It's a large creature. It's faster than the Celestial at a 60-foot flying speed. And as a dragon, you can obviously ride it. So right off the bat, 5th level spell, we get a tanky flying dragon to ride for our 5th level spell slot. But the good stuff doesn't end there.
There is a little bit of confusion in the text here, but from some research that we've done, it seems that the consensus from the community is that the way that this is worded, this dragon, you either choose whether it's chromatic, metallic, or gem. When you choose, it doesn't need to take on a specific flavor of chromatic, metallic, or gem. It just is the aspect of that type of dragon, and therefore it gains all of the resistances associated with that type of dragon. If you choose the chromatic or metallic dragon, you're going to gain resistance to poison, acid, fire, cold, and lightning damage. When you choose the chromatic or metallic dragon, you yourself get to pick one of those that you are also resistant to. Also, this dragon has a breath attack, not a breath attack that needs to recharge, but a breath attack that you can use every turn. And based on the way that this is written, it is implied that you can choose which damage type you are expelling each turn. If you're going up against a red dragon, you can fly your summoned chromatic dragon into battle, which is going to have many resistances, including fire. You can choose fire resistance as your own, and you can breathe cold damage against the red dragon.
What's cool, too, is that the dragon's breath weapon, as Kelly mentioned, has no recharge, and its multi-attack lets it make rend attacks and use its breath weapon in the same action. So it gets to claw, and then spew whatever elemental attack it wants to. If you do upcast it to a 6th level spell slot, it will get to make 3 attacks with the rend, which for a 5th level spell slot, these attacks do quite a lot of damage. Despite being a little d6, the fact that the spell level is added to it means that it actually hits pretty hard. It has to be a melee attack. The breath weapon is a 30-foot cone that only does 2d6 points of damage. So it's actually not a very damaging AoE, but the fact that that AoE is not recharging, it does it every single turn plus the weapon attacks, means that it can really clear out a lot of minions very easily, and it's going to rack up that extra damage turn over turn over turn by being able to choose a really vulnerable damage type. With the gem dragons, you can give yourself resistance to necrotic damage and have it breathing out radiant damage. You could even get nab resistance to force damage or resistance to psychic damage using the gem dragon forms, both of which are really rare resistances for player characters to get, but really handy when against a variety of enemies.
I think that seeing as this is the only summoning spell available to sorcerers, it's a must-have for sorcerers because, again, you can be riding this dragon around. Breath weapons, you gain a resistance. It does claw attacks. You're blasting people with spells. I can't think of a better way to use a 5th level spell slot.
And it has blind sight, so you can use it to find invisible enemies.
So all in all, we do have another summoning spell after this one to talk about, but I think that
tough act to follow.
This is a tough act to follow, and I think it wins for the summoning spells. Our final summoning spell is Summon Fiend. This one's available for Warlocks and Wizards. Again, this is a large creature, so just like you can ride the angels into battle, you can also ride the devils into battle.
This is a 6th level spell, though, so it is pretty costly as far as the summons go, but it will be making 3 attacks with whatever form you choose, either the demon, the devil, or the Yugoloth form. The form that the Fiend has actually affects its hit points, with the Yugoloth being quite tanky, and all the forms having a decent armor class. Although I do think that the devil is the winner here, because again, it flies and has a ranged attack, whereas the other 2 forms do not fly. And while it is fun that the Yugoloth can teleport around between its attacks, and the demon blows up when it dies, I think just a large flying ranged attacker is kind of what the doctor ordered.
I think that any summon that has flight and a ranged attack is a clear winner, especially if you can ride it.
Yep. So overall, there's quite a wonderful smorgasbord of options for a variety of player characters. I personally think, for myself, if I was going to be playing a summon-focused character, I really think with this new crop of spells, the Druid makes out like a bandit. Because the Druid has Summon Beast, so you're going to start summoning right away with 2nd level spell slots at 3rd character level. You upgrade that to the Summon Fae, which is going to be amazing with either a 3rd or a 4th level spell slot. And then you cap it off with the Summon Draconic Spirit. Kind of an amazing progression through the summoning ranks. Whereas the Wizard has it pretty good with both the Fae Spirit and the Dragon. And sorcerers are just happy once they get to 9th level and can get that 5th level spell slot.
I think there's a really funny play here that gives the Drake Warden Ranger a run for its money, where if you want to roleplay that the beast that you summon is a baby dragon, and then the Fae that you summon is a slightly more teenaged magical dragon learning its magical powers.
A fairy dragon, yeah.
A fairy dragon.
Yeah.
And then eventually you turn it into the adult dragon, maybe, version.
Well, it is interesting because the Drake Warden Ranger, I do believe, does get Summoned Draconic Spirit, so you can have a flight of dragons backing you up, just like the Beastmaster can from earlier levels of play. So that's a fun way to run it.
All in all, Wizards, Druids are probably the top 2 summoners out there. I think Rangers got some really nice options here. Clerics and Paladins get 1, which seems appropriate for them, and the Sorcerers get 1. I'm really sad, though, that I feel like Bards, there's nothing in the lore of what a Bard is that implies that they shouldn't be summoning creatures. But I guess you need to rely on your magical secrets. But I honestly do think a lot of these options are great pickups for magical secrets.
In the 3rd edition spell compendium, Bards did have a summon spell. It was called Summon Accompaniment, and it summoned backing music for your main performance.
Where is our summon band? Let's get that going.
Yeah, call the band. Yeah, summon the Mystery Machine.
So I do feel like it's a little sad that Bards kind of got the short end of the stick here, but everybody else made out really well.
I feel like I would have expected them to get Summon Fae.
Summon Fae, that was the one that surprised me the most. Bards summoning pixies and fairies to swing swords at their enemies seemed wildly appropriate.
And I do feel that the Sorcerer should have the Elemental as well. And I would even give the Shadow Sorcerer Shadowspawn. I know that the Clockwork Soul Sorcerer does get the Construct as well.
Yeah, there's a few on the list here that I feel like Sorcerers could have gotten and it wouldn't have made that big of a difference.
I don't think it's too problematic for sorcerers to have more summon spells. Not a lot of sorcerer meta magic interacts with summon spells, so it's not like you can twin a summon spell. It doesn't work that way. So
the only thing that you can really do is use the meta magic that allows you to lengthen the spell, where you're taking it from 1 hour and making it 2 hours.
Yeah.
That might be useful in some cases, but that is really the only meta magic that comes to mind.
Overall, this new generation of summoning spells offers some really great options for many, many more characters that are much more streamlined in play than cracking open the monster manual. I still really like the old summoning spells because they are so powerful. Conjure animals and conjure woodland beings are great, but definitely if your group prefers a less ambiguous and more firm grasp on how summoning should work in your games, I recommend using these spells perhaps over the original generation of summoning spells. They can be used together, and of course, characters like the Shepherd Druid or the Conjuration Wizard Many of these spells do slightly interact with their class features, although you might have to make some decisions about exactly how certain effects are going to work.
So this has been a look at playing a summoner revisited in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Tell us your thoughts on the new summoning spells and some of the summoning characters that you've played in the comments below.
As we mentioned before, the videos that we make on our channel are made possible because we have an amazing Patreon community which helps support our work. If you enjoy what we do on YouTube and want to get in on our Patreon community, chat with us on our patron-only Discord, follow the links in the description below to find out how you can sign up.
And if you want to see some zany spellcasting, you can check out our live play in the Worlds of Drakenheim, which airs Tuesday evenings on Twitch. You can watch all of the previous episodes right up over here.
And we got many more guides to playing various character archetypes in D&D 5e right up over here.
Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell for notifications so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time
in the dungeon.